Hey guys, welcome back to the Paladin's Alliance. The major is around the corner. Stockholm is going to be quickly approaching now, and so I wanted to release another video on the Ones to Watch series with the newly qualified Challenger stage teams now that we have. So I'll be looking over a player from Ents, Movistar Riders, and Pain this time, but a little thing that I want to switch up before we get started is I'm actually partnering with my good friends over at Leetify to basically talk a little bit more about their rating and how we can get a better understanding of how good these players are heading into Stockholm, and how I think that you guys should use this for your own games to get a better understanding as to how good you actually are and where you can improve later on. So we're going to be starting off with the Opper of Movistar Riders, or SunPayus. He did absolutely outstanding during the IM Fall group stage, and then in the lower bracket where he had to clutch out against Copenhagen Flames, actually. And you can see here, so this Excel spreadsheet that I have here is basically all of the players in IM Fall Europe sorted by the Leetify rating. So Zaiwu was the HLTV #1 rated, as well as Leetify rankings #1. But then you start seeing a little bit of discrepancy when you look at, surprisingly, Rainwaker being 3rd on the Leetify ranking and 9th in the HLTV ranking. A drastic difference between them, but a lot of Leetify's ranking comes off of not necessarily hardcore statistics, but rather a little bit more of those intangibles trying to be quantified through the Leetify ranking. So instead of that smaller number, we have a larger number used throughout the Leetify rating to help understand the real discrepancies between different players, and they take it into account of flash assists a lot of the times, trading a lot more, and if that player is actually traded or whether they're just running out and dying essentially and not getting any concrete information for each of these players. So now jumping into SunPayus, he actually was the 20th for HLTV, but the reason why I wanted to highlight him here is he's actually 15th on the Leetify ranking, although they had to fight through that, I believe, 5th through 8th bracket or something like that, where they needed to win one more game to qualify for the major, where they beat CPH Flames in a very tight 2-0. But again, that Leetify ranking should help give you a better understanding as to how good he is. And I have a couple rounds picked out for each of these players that we'll be talking about, 3 players here. And if by any chance that you want to use Leetify for your demos, you can do that. You can actually manually upload your own demos and see where you could actually improve through heat maps or through aim trading via headshot percentages. And they'll give you maps and videos to help get your game up. So I actually dropped my referral link down in the description box below. And if you want to try to apply it to your own game, as I am with SunPayus and my other 2 players later on, I actually suggest that you actually try that out sometime. So let's jump into the demos, a couple rounds, and I really want to showcase how good SunPayus really is going into Stockholm. So SunPayus isn't necessarily the most aggressive opper, but he has a very good understanding as to when he has to take the matters into his own hands and play a little bit more in your face of the opponents throughout IM Fall, and he showed that very well early on in the Spanish roster. So we'll see in this round here how he's able to catch a great timing in fact, on Copenhagen Flames, and basically steals the round away off of the back of his heroics throughout this match, and even this map later on you'll see as well. So he starts off with dropping his regular utility for the ramp position, as he wants his riflers to go a little bit more aggressive on the crane with low pause. But as he pivots back, normally what he would do is he would just stay back in mid and wait for the T's to come to him. But in this situation, he realizes that with the aggressive stance of Davi G in the bottom of B ramp, he has a opportunity to go fishing in mid. And so as he pivots back, he'll realize that the pins are being pulled, and he's going to swing essentially at this point. He catches a timing there on Nico, and then Zyphon as well should be able to swing, but he's trying to throw a flash, right? So there's no way that SunPayus should regress in this situation. It's good on him to actually aggress and take the fight to Xiphon. And at this point, you're like, okay, the round should be done. But somehow, someway, Yabby and Roy like pull back the round, especially with their kills on the bottom of B ramp. And now it's only SunPayus on this side of the map. CPH Flames know that Alex and Mopaz like to play on the A site, and it's all up to SunPayus. He has to now anchor the bomb site with an AWP, no less. All the money's in CPH Flames' favor as well. It's essentially a 3v1, and it's all up to him. So he throws his flash over, and now this is where the raw talent and skill of SunPayus starts to show. Much more than his decision making in the beginnings of the round. So he wants to get all the information. He knows that they'll be dissuaded from coming up mid, and now he gets just set and understands that Roy could be waiting in the cubby. Gets him, and right before he dies, he somehow flicks onto Yabby. And at this point, it's just a 2v1 for Uxie. It's quite a difficult situation for him. And you'll see Alex flashes for Mopaz. Mopaz dies, but gets the information here. And Alex secures the round for Movistar Riders. And this is largely the reason as to why they were able to come back. These heroics from SunPayus time and time again. He was able to create openings through situational awareness of the rounds, but also was able to create raw rounds for Movistar Riders through sheer skill and aim. So I really enjoyed watching SunPayus play on this team in a relatively fresh roster. So hopefully that honeymoon period doesn't wear off. And we'll see in this next round that I've picked out his clutch factor as well. So they've pushed it to overtime here on Vertigo against CPH Flames. And now I want to show you the big round that really took Twitter by storm, especially, and try to dissect it a little bit more as to why SunPayus was as successful as he was in this map here. So he gets a good little nade combo here with the rest of his team. They like throwing these nades down ramp, and it rewards them as they hadn't done it as often, and it gets a good chunk of damage off on most of the CPH Flames members. And at this point, he gets flashed off a couple of angles, and Movistar Riders are going to start to get a little bit more uncomfortable in this situation, especially with the amount of pressure that CPH Flames are applying to that sandbags position and the sidewalk position as well. And that pick on Mopaz just makes things much worse for Movistar. So at this point, you're really questioning what SunPayus can do. He either can aggress, go 1-for-1, but that Molotov really dissuades him from doing that, right? So at this point, he has to play passive. He either has to apply utility support for his teammates, as Alex and I think Davy G do there. And first of all, a good tag there for SunPayus to knock Uxie down to 1 HP, which is finished off by Alex. And at this point, that short pincer that the CTs had is now completely nullified, and SunPayus is the only one on the site. So he understands this, and he wants to stay alive as much as possible. It's super important that he does, because again, if his teammate could maybe, like Death's just actually coming from the A ramp position to try to get a flank in, and that's really the only saving grace that they have in this round. So SunPayus does miss that one shot from the Xiphon, but he does reorient later on. So once that happens, he just wants to stay alive. He says, let's give the plant over. Let's see if Copenhagen Flames decide to offer up anything else, and they don't. And at this point, Death tries to strike, but Roy is intelligent enough to keep it alive. And so now SunPayus is thrust into the clutch. He has no other choice. He has to go. There's no way he's going to get out, that's for sure. So he takes the fight onto the little cubby that is on the left-hand side of the default box, and he takes out Nico Odos. And at this point, he knows that there's one short shelf because of Roy taking out Deaths, and he knows that there's still one on the default plant spot. And that shoulder bait definitely spots out Yabby, and it just keeps encroaching up on him. And somehow, he gets that footstep on the left side, but he swipes over to the right, and he clips Roy through the box somehow. The third shot especially should never be happening, even though Roy is somewhat overextending. And SunPayus really pulls a rabbit out of the hat in this round and shows how clutch that he can be on this team. He's such a pivotal piece to Movistar Riders, and if they want to succeed, we're going to see some serious impact needed from him on the CT side, but especially on that T side. His rifling has to step up and match that kind of CT opping that he's been known for so far for the Movistar Riders. So the next player that I want to talk about is Spinx from ENCE, as they came in second place at this RMR at IM Fall. Really impressed with what I saw by them, especially from Hades, and I'll link a previous video that I did with him in the description as well. He's an exceptional piece, but I want to talk more about Spinx using the Leetify match page that I was so graciously given by my partners over at Leetify. So this is something that you can use in your gameplay to help compare exactly how well you did in this map. And you can see the amount of impact that Spinx did with the rating that he's given here, with a plus 5.62 rating. And although Diha has the same rating as Spinx here with a 1.36 on both sides, the impact and the trading that Spinx was able to provide, especially on the CT side, was so pivotal to this ENCE roster that he was really the main reason as they were able to steamroll through G2 on Mirage itself and really level the playing field for this BO3. So I want to jump into the demo and really contextualize as to how important this Israeli player is and how ENCE might even be a dark horse for Stockholm altogether. So on the CT side of Mirage, Spinx definitely loves to play a little bit more of a supportive role in his anchoring, especially on the B bomb site. And with I know we've gone over a couple of B anchors before with like Perfecto and Inters on Navi and Gambit respectively, but on ENCE, Spinx has I think personally he has a higher aim ceiling, and that really allows him to get that extra couple of kills that are required to pull ENCE over the line, especially if the bomb goes down. 90% of the time he'll be able to put ENCE into a favorable man advantage situation. And you'll see here he even decides to double op alongside Hades. And one thing that I like to just note for players that are watching this is you don't necessarily need to be the flashiest opper on the B site, but if you're aware as to all of the angles that you're susceptible to when you're opping, you can basically situationally box out certain angles and only have to focus on one thing and one shot at a time throughout the round. And you'll see Spinx does a wonderful job, even though he's not necessarily known as a secondary opper for ENCE. So as the round progresses, he decides to take a little bit of a cat peek on Chair, and he won't get anything rewarded for it necessarily, but he does get a tad bit of information. Hunter gets finished off in mid, the only real bit of mid control that G2 has. And at this point, Spinx hears the cat smoke and he wants to play ahead of it, right? And so he plays on the right hand side of the pillar, so he only has to really expose himself to that right hand window angle. So you'll see here, he sees Amanek bounding over, and again, when he exposes himself, he only exposes that angle that Amanek is at once he jumped down. He's aware of that, and he takes him out. And at this point, the common idea is that you would swing on the right, and that's where Nexa and Jax could double swing on him. But he's aware of this, and he says, I'm going to swing on the left side because I'm aware that I'm going to get double peeked here. And he takes care of Jax with his arm showing, and that Molly really puts Spinx into a pickle here, but that's where he uses the smoke, uses it very defensively, and we're in a 4v2 situation, but the round can quickly fall apart, as Nico showed with the kill on Hades. But Spinx just sits in the smoke here. He wastes so much utility from the G2 side, and just staying alive in this situation lasts so much value. And eventually Spinx swings out. I think he might get another kill here onto Nexa, not exposing him to self to the apps position. And Dodo takes care of business on Nexa formally, not Spinx. But playing around the smoke that Nico threw, Spinx gets the third kill and really secures the economy for ENCE on this CT side. And you'll see throughout this map, the reason why they were able to steamroll was largely because of how easily Spinx was able to not only hold down the B bomb side, but when he rotated over onto A, he was able to take care of retakes there as well. So lesser weaponry here for ENCE on this round, and this was quite a close map, all things considered, and it largely came off of the heroics of Spinx throughout this map. It's actually what inspired me to put him into this video itself. And you'll see here how he's able to use his better weaponry to take the bomb site and then take matters into his own hands once the bomb actually gets planted. So they wait around for a little while, let for this initial utility on the B side to go away. And with the AK that he has, one of the only two rifles on the end side, he's trying very hard to swing wide on all of his angles and trade the pistols that are going in to get him the information. So Snappy dies there. He knows that there's one car on Nexa, and he gets that kill. And then meanwhile, Dodo trades effectively to secure the bomb site. So now we're in a 3v3 situation, and things can get from bad to worse very quickly in this even keel situation. And Spinx understands that he has a lot on his shoulders at this point. And with that smoke going down an upper, and he's going to hear a couple scopes here as well on the outside of the door. So you should hear it there. Now Spinx has a lot of information. He knows that there's one coming from upper as well with that Molotov. And so with all that information, Hades decides to go aggressive, get out that information, and he gets the kill on Nico. With that shallow lurk smoke, Jax is killed by Spinx. And although Amanek is known to clutch, he wants to stop whatever possibility could come forth and goes aggressive onto him by pushing the window. So good awareness for Spinx to not only swing wide and take all that space with the better weaponry on the team, but also shut down a lot of different angles once he's gathered all that information. So really excited to see Ents perform alongside Hades, alongside Spinx, and who knows how well they'll do if they get into the Legend stage. You never know. So the last player that I want to talk about is Saffee from Pain Gaming, their opper of this rising Brazilian talent throughout NA, really. So the reason why I wanted to bring him up the most out of any of the players on Pain is the amount of consistency that he's brought to the table in recent. So you see here in this game, his numbers don't necessarily jump off the page, especially when you have players like Nekius who are getting consistent entries on the T side. This game that they won against Liquid was largely won from the T side, and at that point, you know, there's not a lot of opportunities for an opper to open up rounds once all of your T entries are working through your rifling. So his stats here are still really good, even though he's playing from the T side with the T AWP and closing the game out or through the CT side. So one thing to note, obviously, is his KDA is the highest of the team, and alongside that, he's also getting consistent multi-frags as well. Like, you know, he's not necessarily just getting the opening and just dying. He's able to get to snowball the round in such a way that the rounds can get closed out sooner by the rifles on the side. So let's jump into the demos to really show the more intangible sides of Saffee and how it justifies his good Leetify rating here. So a lot of the time, T-oppers don't necessarily know how to take charge when they have the AWP and tend to play a little bit more passive, especially on the nuke T side of all maps. But here, Saffee really showcases how hungry he is for entries. And once he does get that first entry, he really wants to close out the round by getting the 5v3. But not in a situation that really overwhelms him into the number of angles that he's peeking into. But it's a pretty conservative yet aggressive approach in how he looks for the second entry after he gets the first one. So let's break this round down real quick. Saffee, straight out the gate, he wants to go for a ramp pick, and as soon as he kills Fallen, he wants to take all that space. Hardzao and co want to take all the space on ramp because Fallen takes up so much of ramp, and Saffee immediately throws down his Molotov. You have a nade as well, I think, from Hardzao, and you know, Saffee is now looking for another pick. He looks into hell for a short minute, but then that's immediately when he pivots to B, and he wants to see if there's somebody behind the little silo, if there's anyone showing in double, if there's anyone showing in radio. He's just so hungry for that second kill, because as a CT, in a 5v3 situation, and you lose the bomb site, the round's over. They're going to have to save. And you see those tags that Naf sends up, that immediately reorients Saffee to come back to hell, and he gets that kill. Now we're in that 5v3 situation, and the bomb can pretty much go uncontested down on B. Stewie has to really evacuate, and unless a kill presents itself from Pain, the round has to be in their favor. And obviously you see here, PKL does fall to a Liege, and now Liquid is lulled into a false sense of security that they can come back into this round. So again, Saffee's patrolling through hell and ramp both, but with Grim getting that kill and putting it down to a 3v3, it really looked like Liquid were ready to come back into this round. And when a Liege strikes through the radio smoke, it leads it all to Big Azera to get the 1v2 clutch, and he does. But again, we wouldn't be in such a scenario if Saffee didn't produce the 5v3 situation that allowed them to just get a free bomb plant and play out the post plant. So you see how hungry he is on the T side, and you'll see even on the CT side, he has that tempered aggression that really molds him into a great CT, it's a more well-rounded opper from Brazil. So there are not a lot of CT-sided rounds in this game, in specific with Liquid, because they had such a great T half. But I still want to highlight one of these rounds. It's a very simple round, deceptively simple, with Saffee playing on the CT side of things. And you'll see how aware he is of the timings of Liquid, and how aware, even in the micro situations, how poised he looks when pressured. So he takes a little double take there. He spots Allegia's feet and reorients himself to see if he can get a pick off there on the outside. But he does spot information that players are crossing over, and for that reason, he'll come back to ramp and play it safe, knowing that there could be a B play on the cards. So he pivot backs, he doesn't necessarily see anything. He flashes ramp, he checks it again. But again, he's well aware that there should be something going on in B, especially after they re-smoked that last bit of the wall of smokes on outside. So he comes back, he smokes off radio, and although Stewie moves through it, this smoke here that Liquid has dropped on the side of ramp has a glaring gap in it. And at that point, Saffee has a decision on whether or not he wants to go through it, play around it, or just let the smoke dissipate. And he decides to play around it, and his awareness that Team Liquid are not aware of how bad the smoke is really lends itself to working in his favor. So he knows that he doesn't have to necessarily push the issue in this situation, and so he can just hang back and play around it. So you watch here, he hears everything. He knows that Stewie's there in radio, and he knows Elite just peeks out there, and he has all of the information. And since all of his teammates were able to get the kills from single, to get effective trades from double as well, all of the round really hinges on just Saffee hitting some easy shots. But if he doesn't have that awareness to play around the smoke and instead push the issue and try to necessarily take a close range fight against maybe Grim or Stewie, that's when the round can really fall apart, especially with how exceptional Stewie is with playing around T-smokes. So a good, well-rounded opper is Saffee from Pain Gaming, and I expect great things from him on the LAN stage in his debut. If the pressure gets to him, we might have a completely different situation for the squad. All in all, the PGL Major in Stockholm is going to be very exciting, considering even though there are some legacy teams like FaZe, Astralis, Heroic, VP, all these more LAN tenured teams that are available at the stage, the challenger stage, you also have a lot of challenging teams that are on the horizon and on their tails. These teams haven't necessarily shown that they are LAN tenured, but they impressed at the EU RMR, and even the NA RMR, there were some signs of life from these better teams. So I'm really excited to see those three squads in specific, but even teams like CPH Flames, teams like Entropic, as I talked about Elian earlier on, you have the possibility of the Chinese also surprising here with, I think, who was I thinking about? Dan King and the old guard of Attacker and somebody. And you have just so many opportunities for upsets throughout the Swiss system. And I want to highlight these three teams in specific. So excited for the major circuit to be back after nearly 2 years. I'm absolutely bubbling with excitement. Can't wait to see what happens next. But if you like this video, please hit the like button. And if you liked all the Leetify content that I did here with the ratings and such, please don't be afraid to sign up using my referral link. It will really help me out. And I think it would certainly help your game out if you're having trouble with how you might be able to improve in Faceit, or maybe even in just matchmaking in general. So stick out your head to that referral link. And hopefully I'll be back with another video for potentially the coin for the major. I'm not sure if they're doing it this year. I hope they are. And if they do, I will be having a video out. If not, it won't be in the CS UI. I'll probably just do something on my own for a prediction series. And I'll see you then. So see you next week and enjoy the major.